Hey everybody, welcome. Romy here. Um, I have kind of moved my studio around, so I'm a little bit at six and sevens, but trying to get used to my new space here. So it's nice to see you all. I wish I could actually see you, but at least you can see me. So there's that. At any rate, welcome. We are here to talk about Tone Poem, which is the first shawl for the 2022 Lace Lovers Club. And I am just going to show you my hands. We're going to go over a few things today in the pattern. So I had a few updates and I just want to go over those really quickly. And then also, I want to particularly go over the knitted on edging. So please feel free, those of you who are able to make it today, to chat and ask me questions. And I have kind of one eye on the chat over here and one eye on my computer. And my third eye is on my knitting. Anyway, so let me just transition here. Okay, so first, I just wanted to go through the changes I made in the pattern. There were a couple of issues that people pointed out. Thank you very much. And my apologies, by the way. So we already went over this one. There should have been a cable needle then in the materials. Down here, this should have said an additional 73 or 89 times, but it's when I say a total of, it's actually 74 or 90 times. So that's on the edging. And over here, I hope you all were able to catch my video where I went through all of these stitches to show how to do them. The only correction here is I had an extra SSK and I took it out. So, but if you take a look in the list, and I also sent you all a link where I was just only going over these stitches so that you could see how each one of them is done. So chart A, there were no corrections. B and C, no corrections. I did actually, that's not true. I did just clarify the wording under chart C, but I don't think that would have kept you from knitting that correctly. Okay, so in chart D, there were no corrections. In chart E, we talked about this last time. This is C2 up at the top here. The pink part is C2. And so this right in this area here, this should have said C1 plus C2. But, and so I added that. The other thing is these last two wrong side rows. I'm sorry, it's actually these through 14. This should have been just knit one through the back loop 3 times and purl to 3 stitches before the end and knit one through the back loop 3 times. So I think you can probably tell from this and also from the written instructions if you had a problem. The written instructions are completely correct. So, okay, Linda asked if I would email a corrected pattern, and I did actually send out a link to it. So it's updated in your Designs by Romy account, and everybody who's in the club is in a little miniature newsletter. So you'll get those, and every time I update it, I will tell you what I updated and also a link to your account so you can grab it in your account. So it's waiting for you in there right now. Okay, so chart F, It's fine. And again, you already know about this. That was C2. I'm just collecting every little thing on this first version. So in case you did not download the subsequent versions, you'll be able to see them still. And then row 4 is knit 1 through the back loop 3 times, purl to 3 stitches before the end, and then knit 1 through the back loop 3 times. And this we already talked about. It's actually 74 or 90 total. And down here, I just corrected that as well. So this should have said work rows 3 through 14 an additional 73 or 89 times. So that's updated as well. And that was in your last Lace Lovers Club newsletter. So you will have gotten a link. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the charts here. The first thing I wanted to say, I hope you all are enjoying it. I had a fun time knitting this, so I hope you're having a good time too. Okay, so for those of you who would like to add any length to this at all, and I know that some of you have some yarn left over and you wanted to make this larger. So let's talk about how to do that. Okay, just going through all of my charts here. So I think everybody has done chart A, chart B. Okay, so on chart D, here we go. Chart D is repeatable. So if you feel like your gauge is maybe smaller, or you have a lot of yarn left over, you want a larger shawl, then you can actually repeat chart D, and that will allow you to make a larger shawl. So after that, everything else will just be a few extra repeats depending on how many times you repeated chart D. So chart D here has a repeat of 6 stitches, but you can see over here at the edge, it's actually adding, every time we work through chart D, it's going to add 2 more repeats in this area. So that means when you go on to the charts after this, you'll see on chart E, the repeat is now 12 stitches wide. So every single time you repeat an extra chart D, you will have 1 more repeat in chart E. So it all works out so that you can repeat this chart. And it depends on your yardage, of course. So just make sure you have enough yardage. And we'll talk about weighing yarn later on. And I think that will help you determine how much yardage you need. Okay. So we talked about E. Going to go on over here to E. You can see up at the top here, the last 2 rows are worked in color 2. So C2 up at the top here, the last 2 rows. So you can see down here on chart E, we have make one right is on the left side, and then make one left. I'm sorry, make one right is on the left side, make one left is on the right side. And then it changes up top here. So make one left moves to the left side, and make one right moves to the right side. That is not an error. That is because this whole area in chart E, the make ones are on either side of this 1 stitch spine. So up at the top here, we start going into a little bit of a different construction. So instead of that one stitch spine, we're going to kind of branch out, and we're going to have sort of a triangle in the middle here. So there's no longer a one stitch spine. And I thought that the make one left on the left and the make one right on the right looks neater. So they change over, and it's meant to change. It seems a little odd, but this is what we're doing right here. So instead of having that one stitch spine up the center here, we're actually increasing in the middle there. So to increase that and keep this as neat as possible, I've used left, make one left on the left, and make one right on the right side. Okay, so this is also completely centered. So you'll see that the diamond motif is centered over the other diamond motifs in the top of the shawl. And here we have one of my favorite stitches. It's a 3 out of 3. So I just wanted to call your attention. Inside the repeat is a 3 out of 3 stitches. And to either side of that repeat, there are 3 out of 2 stitches. So pay particular attention to the bottom here. You can see that there are 3 stitches coming out of the top and then 2 on the bottom. So the center one is 3 out of 3. And then these 3 stitches to the right and to the left are 3 out of 2 stitches. And inside the repeat here is 3 out of 3, and then 3 out of 2 again. And the 3 out of 2 stitches makes an increase of 1 stitch each time that one is worked. The 3 out of 3 stitches is no increase and no decrease. Okay, so then we're going to get down here to the knitted on edging, and I'm just going to show you this. Some of you, I think, have not done a knitted on edging before. They are very cool. I think there's a lot of fun. So hopefully you will have fun as well. This knitted on edging is worked with 2 different sizes of needles, and that is for 2 reasons. One is a knitted on edging is 2 rows to each body stitch. So each time you do a row here, you're going to use up 1 body stitch with this little squiggly looking thing at the end here, technical term. And then you're going to slip that and work back the other way. So this only shows the right side here, but on the wrong side, you will also be working, you'll be knitting across. And this is a garter stitch edging, not a stockinette stitch edging. And using the 2 sizes of needles is going to help us keep the yardage down to a minimum, and also the gauge is going to better fit the rest of your shawl. Knitted on edgings being 2 rows to each stitch, each body stitch, they can get very loose and wide, and this one did not need such a loose and wide edging. So, and I will show you how to do that. Okay, so first, I just want to show you in my shawl here what I was talking about in the middle. Okay, so you can see at the base here, hopefully, this is just a single stitch column here, and then on the left side, you're going to have the make one right, and on the right side, you're going to have the make one left. So as soon as this changes over and this inside area here starts growing, those two make ones switch. That is where the switch occurs, so that this causes the point to be a little more rounded. So you're just going to see, instead of like a really harsh point up at the top here, this just rounds it off a little bit, and it sets it up really well for that's the edging, so that you can work around the point. Okay. So let's take a look at a couple of the stitches. I'm just going to grab my yarn here, and I have a little tiny swatch there. So just because, let's just go over this one more time. It's in that little video that I did with the stitches, but I'm going to knit one through the back loop. Now I'm going to make one left. Okay, a make one left. I'm going to pick this bar up, and what I want is for that bar to twist towards the left. So I have it up on my left needle here, and I'm just going to keep my right needle in it, and I kind of just put that over the top, and I'm going to knit one through the back loop. I want it to be twisted so it doesn't make a big hole there. Okay, and now I'm going to make one right. So I'm going to come from the front this time and put my bar up on that left needle. This one's a little bit fiddly, so I just kind of pull that around a little bit. I still want to knit this through the back loop because I want to twist that stitch. And there is your make one right. So I'm going to knit one more stitch here. Okay, so when you look at the base here, here's my make one left, and the twist is going to the left. Here's my make one right. The twist is going to the right. And that's how you tell the difference. So make one right, the twist at the base goes to the right. Make one left, the twist at the base goes to the left. Okay, now let's take a look at this stitch right here. This is a 3 stitches out of 2 stitches. So this one is an increase of 1 stitch. You're going to insert your needle through 2 stitches as though you were going to knit 2 together. Knit 1, but you don't pull those 2 stitches off your left needle. Yarn over, and then knit 1 again into those 2 stitches, and now it can come off your left needle. So it looks very, very similar to the 3 into 3 stitches. In the 3 into 3, there's no increase or decrease. And I'm going to put my needle through all 3 of those stitches. Knit 1, leaving the 3 stitches on my needles. Yarn over, and then knit 1 again. And that's going to give you 3 out of 3, and it just makes a nice little edging size. So yay. Hi, Kathleen. I'm so glad that that little needle trick helps you. Okay, so those are the only new stitches that really are in the further charts. So let's take a look here at the edging chart, and I'm just going to kind of back up here out of my stitches, um, and I'm going to do the edging and show you how this works. Okay, so just back up a little bit here. And I'm tinking instead of frogging so I don't lose everything. Okay. So first of all, let's take a look at the way this chart is written. So in here, for the medium and the tall size is a little bit different. So this chart is wider for the tall size. So this little area right in here, if you're following the chart, you are not going to be working this if you're doing the smaller size. If you're doing the larger size, you will be working this repeat here 2 times, and that makes your edging a little bit wider. So it still keeps the character of it, but you'll just have a little bit more width to it, so it gives your shawl an extra bit of length. So when you are working the smaller size, you can actually just block this out if it is confusing at all. And also you can see in the written instructions, so it will show that you're going to knit 2 together, yarn over 0 times or 2 times. So if you are working the smaller size, just go ahead and cross that out if it's kind of distracting. If you're working the larger size, you're going to work this 2 times. Okay, so the way this is written, you're going to have to take a look at the pattern synopsis first, and it kind of reminds you up here. So what we're going to be doing is working 90 degrees to the shawl body. So back and forth, and each time we come to the body, that's where you see at the end here, you're going to knit 2 together through the back loop, and 1 stitch is going to come from the edging, and 1 stitch is going to come from the shawl body stitches. So when you do this knit 2 together through the back loop, you're going to create a really nice braid along the side of it. It looks really nice. I can show you this. So you can see it's a horizontal braid across there. I'm not sure if you can see that because it's such a dark yarn, but you'll be able to see it on the sample that I do. Okay, so let's take a look at the pattern synopsis here, just sort of rifling through my papers. Okay, so in the pattern synopsis, you'll see the edging here, and you're going to, with the right side facing, you're going to cast on 6 or 8 stitches to the left needle. Okay, so I usually use the knitted method. It's much easier to use than a lot of other methods, especially in this type of edging. Okay, so I'm just going to cast on my 6. So I'm going to pretend I'm at the end here and just going to cast on 1. So I'm just keeping my needle in my stitch here. And I usually put my thumb at the end here just to remind myself where I started casting on. But you can mark that however you want. You might want to put a marker there. 3, 4, 5, and 1 more, 6. Okay, so I have 6 stitches cast on. And I can see if you kind of lose your place and you can't tell where you started casting on, just take a look here. That first sort of elongated stitch there is usually the last stitch of your body stitches, and you can kind of follow that edge up into this stitch right there. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm going to go right back here, and I'm going to work these first 2 rows right here. So this is a right side row as it shows right here. Okay, so I'm going to knit 2 stitches through the back loop. Then I am going to yarn over, knit 2 together. Try not to split my yarn here. Knit 2 together. Yarn over. Ah, knit 2 together. Yarn over, knit 1 through the back loop. And I'm off here. I'm only off because I'm live. I did 1 extra yarn over, knit 2 together. So I'm back out again here. That's my stitch through the back loop. And here are the 2 stitches. This one is from the edging, and this one is from the body. So now I'm going to knit 2 together through the back loop. So that is my first row right here. So now that I've done that first row, I'm going to turn this over and slip that first stitch. And now I'm going to knit the rest of the way and knit 1 through the back loop and knit 1 through the back loop. Okay. So this was the first 2 rows. You can't really see it all that well yet, but down in this area right here, this is going to be a little braid across there. Okay, so one really cool thing about the knitted on edging is that you can tell how much yarn you're going to use through the whole knitted on edging. So here is my favorite little trick here. Just gonna put this up a little bit here so you can kind of see. This used to be only a jewelry scale for me. I used to use it only to measure troy ounces, but it has grams too. And everybody who is getting club shipments got a little scale, and that is to measure when you start to do your knitted on edging. So what I do is after I have done those first 2 rows, I am going to measure. I'm going to weigh how much yarn I have. Okay, so this is just this is my leftovers from my own edging. So what I'm going to do is just weigh however much yarn I have left and then note how much it weighs. So note down how much the yarn weighs, and we're going to weigh again after the full repeat, the first repeat. So let's put this aside. Okay. So I'm going to be working with my smaller double pointed needle here and my working needle. So you can also, I didn't use the smaller double point to cast on, but you can do either way. It doesn't make a lot of difference because you're casting on to your working needle. So whichever one you use to cast on is totally fine. Okay, so here's my smaller double point. This is a size 3 US, and my working needle is a size 4. So I'm just going to go along here and work one of these repeats. And as I'm going, you'll be able to see um, how that braid is going to look. So I am on the second row. So each time you see that little knit one through the back loop here, that is increasing a little tiny triangle along the side. And here you can see, it's more obvious now, you can see the last stitch of the edging, and then this is another body stitch. So these two are going to get knit together through the back loop. And now you can kind of start to see that braid. Okay, so let's turn this over. And that first stitch is slipped with the yarn in front. So slipping with the yarn in front is what gives you that nice clean braid on the front side. You don't want to slip with your yarn on back because that's going to create little imperfections in your braid on front. So super important. Okay, I'm just going to move this over a little. And now I'm back to my double pointed needle. This is actually makes it easier to use all together. It makes it easier to do one of these edgings because instead of having all of those stitches on your working needle, you get to kind of just let it hang a little bit. You can put maybe a nice stitch holder on the other side, keep the stitches from coming off the needle. And we're still building our triangle. And you can see again, I'm back to the edge here. Now I think I have enough stitches to show you what is happening here. So you can see this is actually what's happening. We are working the edging on at a 90-degree angle to the body stitches. Okay, I'm going to turn this over. And I'm just going to do one repeat and show you how that looks. And while I'm doing this, please, if you have any questions or anything, please ask them in the chat and I will answer you. Happy to answer. If you want to check gauge or anything, it's probably, you don't really have to check gauge, but it will help you figure out how much yarn you have. One thing that I didn't talk about when I started this was I use markers. I use stitch markers. So when I started working the edging, I already had my markers in place. So I had markers along the way, kind of every 12 stitches, because that last larger repeat chart had a 12 stitch repeat. So it's a really good idea when you start doing this to add markers if you don't use them. So that will help you if you have to pick up your knitting later. So since this isn't, this one was not, this one was 13 stitches, so it's 2, 4, 6. So I used, so far I have used 3 stitches here. And that really helps when you're looking at your chart. So what if I went away and I put my knitting down and I came back and I didn't know where I was. I was trying to figure out if I needed to do another row here. I would be able to see, okay, well, there are 3 stitches left. So that means I have to do rows 9, 11, and 13. So, which is a very good thing too when I'm live and I'm like thinking about other things. Okay, so I'm going to be on row 9, and on row 9 we start decreasing out here. So you can see this is a knit 2 together through the back loop, and then we're going to start decreasing our diamond. So I'm going to knit 1 through the back loop, and then that's a knit 2 together through the back loop. And now I am just going to start reducing across. This is going to go back the other way. And with garter stitch, you're not going to see any of the traveling stitches. So I'm not going to, for instance, this kind of annoys me on stockinette stitch when I see this side doesn't have that little line of stitches that the decrease creates. So with a garter stitch, you'll never see that. It looks the same on both sides. And if you are as, if you, if things bother you like me, then you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And if they don't, no worries. Okay, so we are almost done with this one repeat. And now you can really see along the bottom here how that braid is looking. I love that little braid across, and I know some other people love braids as much as I do. So once this is done, this is going to be the time to go back and weigh your yarn again. So now I'm going to show you my favorite SSK that I do when I'm doing an SSK and I don't have a yarn over next to it. I am going to go in the front of this first stitch and then in the back of the second stitch. And what that does is twist the underside stitch. So the top stitch here has no twist at the base, but that stitch that's under there, that one has a twist. And I think it lays really nicely across across this solid fabric. Okay, so one more. I'm not going to do another repeat. I am going to show you how to bind off. And okay, so I'm on this last row up here. And you can see at the left side here, that is now a knit 2 together. So just to call your attention to that. Okay, so we're going to knit 1 through the back loop, knit 2 together through the back loop, and when there's a yarn over, I like to do an just a regular SSK. And a yarn over, think I messed this up somehow, probably, but I'm going to fix it. Not sure what I'm going to do to fix it yet, but I will. Okay, let's see. I think I did an extra there. I don't know. So embarrassing. Okay. So I'm just going to pretend that I didn't screw this up. So here's the last. Okay, so I just used that last stitch here, and this is my full repeat. So if I wasn't going to show you how to bind off, I would work this last row here and then weigh my yarn. So one more wrong side row, then I would get my scale out, weigh my yarn again, and at that point calculate to see how many grams per one of these repeats of rows 3 through 14. And then once I get that, I'm going to figure out I need to do 73 more repeats of that. So I will then multiply times 73 the number of grams that it takes to do one repeat and make sure that I have enough yarn. So of course, if you're doing the tall, you will want to multiply your one repeat by 89, and just to make sure that you have enough yarn. And so what you can figure out by that is, okay, if you aren't going to have enough yarn, you can probably go down in needle size again, and everything should be fine. So it should be totally fine. You can knit a little bit tighter. If you're doing the tall size, you can take maybe one of the repeats out. You should be completely fine. All of the people who have tested this had plenty of yarn left over. So, okay. So now we are going to bind off. I'm going to pretend that these stitches are not here. So I'm just going to take these away so we're not looking at them. So I'm pretending here that we are at the end of the line. This first stitch is still going to be slipped with the yarn in front. And then I'm going to knit one stitch, and I'm going to place those two stitches back onto my left needle and then knit two together through the back loop. Okay, and then that is just going to continue all the way across. Every time I have two stitches on my right needle, I'm going to slip them back onto my left needle, keep my right needle in the back here, and knit two together through the back loop. And I'm just going to bind off all the way across here. So I'm just following the instructions for knitting that last row. And all I'm doing is binding off after I have worked each stitch. So here I am at the end, and I'm just going to pull my yarn through here, and then I can just break it off. Okay, so that is what our little tiny one repeat looks like. And you can see, if you look at the base here and how wide that is, you can see that it's a fair amount wider up at the top there. And once this is all stretched out and blocked, it's going to be even wider. So all the way around, it's gonna be a nice wide border. And it will block out beautifully. And this is what it looks like once it's blocked out. So in the middle, you will have added a few extra stitches up top here to kind of go around the corner. And you can see the point of this diamond hits right between these 2 points. So everything works out. Okay, let's see. Just trying to make sure that nobody had any other questions. Um, okay, so blocking. I know that there were some people who were a little concerned about the yarn, and it does feel, because it's a woolen spun yarn, it does feel like it's very delicate and fluffy and light. But when you actually get this wet and block it, it will be fine. So when yarn is wet, it's actually stronger, and instead of having all of the tension on one small point of the yarn, you will find that it's across many, many points of the lace. So once it's all knit up, it's actually very strong, stronger than you would think that it is. And whenever material is wet, it's also stronger. So the way that I blocked this, I used blocking wires. I have flexible blocking wires that I love, and I just wove in and out of the edge up here. So I just took my blocking wire in and out of the little garter ridges up at the top, all the way to the end. I like the flexible ones because this has a little bit of a curve in it, and I'm able to keep that little bit of a curve in there and kind of keep that nice sort of swooping wing-like shape. On the bottom, they're points. It's another reason that I love knitted on edgings, because you can just run your blocking wire through the points. So once I've done that, mine are flexible and very thin. So I spread it out on my interlocking blocking mats. And starting at the center, I put a pin right at the top of the center here and a pin at the bottom and center it across my mats. And then I work from there, just sort of stretching it out and evening it out. I try to keep my pins along the seam of the blocking mat, and that way I kind of have a reference point. So, and I don't actually measure it. So I do the tops first. I pin all that out. I pin the last point on the side out on both sides. And once that is done, then I start stretching the um, the bottom out a little bit. I do it bit by bit because with flexible blocking wires, they're very flexible. Mine are actually rather thin flexible blocking wires. So I kind of rearrange a little bit, pull down a little bit, smooth things, pin out more and more. But I did want to say I blocked this thuggishly. So one of my favorite technical terms. It's a thuggish block, and I blocked it so hard that I actually had to put weights down on the blocking mats. And it came through perfectly, even though it is a very light and fluffy yarn. It's it worked perfectly. So I think you will be happy with your results. So I'm just gonna check, make sure that I got all of my questions and everything. And I do want to say one thing. Thank you so much to my awesome moderators on both Ravelry and Facebook. You guys are the best. So thank you, thank you. And I am actually preparing for my mystery long to kick off tomorrow. So, kind of excited there. And I hope you all are joining me there as well. So there is going to be another Zoom meetup, and I'll send out a date and time and a registration link, and I hope to see you there. And I'm just going to blather a little tiny bit to make sure there weren't any more questions. I think we're good. But anyway, let me know if you have other questions. And you can just write and say, hey, could you cover this or that or whatever I didn't cover? And I will do that. So thank you for joining me. It's always fun to do these, and I hope to see you soon. Take care, everybody.